Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm Heather.
And I'm Taya.
And today we are talking about anxiety and depression and all the mental health things. It's going to be a fun one, guys. Trigger warning. We're talking about anxiety and depression. So if you are not in the mental health headspace to talk about these issues, then join us on the next one.
Yes.
But yeah, we're going into some heavy stuff, and we both have a lot of experience, unfortunately, with mental health issues.
And to be clear, we are still in the midst of working out all of these things. We are in no way on the other side of working through some past traumas or anything like that. So please take it all with a grain of salt, because we might not mean what we say in another year or something. Who knows?
Yeah, that's so true.
Right?
Yeah, we are definitely not on the other side. We do have some good coping mechanisms now, and we're working through things, but it is always a work in progress. So when I was thinking about this episode and thinking about kind of my history with anxiety, I started getting anxiety when I was a kid. Like, I remember I nearly had a panic attack my first day of 5th grade, so I was 10.
Man.
Yeah. And like rearranging my room, like change, I wasn't really good with. Like, yeah, if I moved my bed around, I would feel anxiety, and I'd be like, why do I feel weird? Why don't I feel good? Like, this is fine. Moving houses was also not great for me. Mm-hmm. Luckily, we didn't move a lot. And then, things kind of got worse as an adult. What about you, Taya? What's been your history with anxiety?
I don't remember any as like a kid, but I definitely remember like as a young adult. Now looking back, I'm like, oh yeah, that was definitely a panic attack or just times of heightened anxiety. And then, looking back now, I've realized I've had like depressive episodes, which I was just kind of attributed to either being lazy or feeling kind of like burnt out. And now, would say like hindsight's 2020.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so true. I have had as well depressive episodes, and my first thought is, God, why am I so lazy?
Yeah.
Like, just get up and do stuff. Like, yeah, it's terrible.
And I don't know if this has been your experience, but I feel like I have definitely fallen victim to the stigmas around mental health, which is why I think it's so important that we are having this conversation, because it affects way more people than any of us know. But, there's stigmas that come along with it, and thinking like, well, I'm not depressed because I can get up and shower and go to work and feed my family, and I can do all these things, and I just crave my bed, or but being depressed isn't always not showering and, these like really extreme cases. Sometimes you can have depression and not be depressed. And there's a difference between the two. And I'm still learning that.
Yeah. That's an interesting point. Yeah. And you can, excuse me, like come in and out of depressive episodes.
Yeah.
Like one week you'll feel great, and then the next week you absolutely don't care about anything.
Yes.
So in your case, what would you say, how does your like anxiety and depression manifest? Is it like social situations, things you avoid?
Well, that's kind of a tricky question, because there are certain things that trigger it really strongly, and there are other things that I'm very okay with. Typically it's circumstantial, which I guess that's the case for everybody. But I can do fine in social situations. Typically I can put on this like persona, and I think it's because we were trained for the majority of our lives on how to speak to people, public, speaking was something we were trained in weekly. So those types of things don't bring me anxiety typically, but
The
it's
social
when
situations. Yeah. I
Yeah.
agree with you. I think
Right.
it's almost kind of weird because, groups going out with people, I actually enjoy that. And I know a lot of people have anxiety with social situations. And that's never been my case either.
Yeah, it's been few and far between the cases where I'm like, I really don't want to be at this event or something. And I also don't have any trouble leaving or canceling last minute. So,
Good.
that's
Yeah.
kind of saved me. Yeah. What about you? How does it manifest for you?
Yeah, I remember when I had like my first full-blown panic attack. I was like 20, in my early 20s. I think I had just graduated nursing, so 22ish, and you live with like the fear of having another one. So now you have anxiety about having anxiety. It's great. So whenever I'm in a situation where I feel like I can't leave, I have to have it together. And a lot of times this happens at work, where like working in the operating room, I can't just leave whenever I want.
Can you imagine?
Yeah, I mean, like, and so I'll be in this situation where like I'm assisting the anesthesiologist or something, and I'm like, I cannot panic right now. And it's so dumb because it's absolutely my brain making me panic because I'm like, I can't panic. So that has definitely happened to me. There was a time where I wasn't on medication, and that was a big struggle, was at work. But yeah, so socially, not really. I would say circumstantial as well. Like, depends who I'm around. And some people, drain your energy, and you're like, oh, I don't want to be here. And
I feel like I can speak for both of us in that in the last few years, we opted to leave that religious community that we were a part of. And that to me was a massive trigger for my anxiety. And I didn't realize the extent to which I was living in that constant state of super high anxiety. And now I look back at things that we did during that time period, and I'm just like, oh my God, that was so cringeworthy. Like, why did we do that or say that? Or, but it all stemmed from a very high stress situation.
Yeah.
That had a big impact on us.
100%. That was huge. And I would say, we left like 3 years ago now, or something like that. So I've been dealing with anxiety for a long time. And I feel like for the most part, it's under control. I haven't had a panic attack in a super, super long time. I don't even remember when the last time was. But yeah, going through that whole process of leaving, which was not easy. And I didn't purposely even want to leave. And then going through the guilt, the changes in, family dynamics and all of their input. And it felt like I was like grieving myself, an old self that, again, I don't do well with change. So this religion had been my entire life up until I was 31 or 32.
Yeah.
And now I was like, oh shit, who am I outside of this?
Yeah. Talk
Literally,
about an
who
existential
am I?
crisis.
Yeah. That'll give you anxiety.
I know. Yeah, so you asked like how it manifested, and to me immediately I thought like there was, I tried to go back for someone's funeral after they'd passed, and I'd known them my whole life and wanted to show my support of the family. I was shaking so hard in the car.
It was at
it was at
church.
Our old place of worship, and I pulled into the parking lot and I saw people at the door, and I shook more and more, and I just kept on driving, and I came right home and crawled back in bed and was like. And that was the first time my anxiety has ever stopped me from doing something so vividly that like I could not control my body, but I knew if I was to try to walk in that building, I would absolutely freak out. Yeah. And so I'm like, why would I do that to myself? And so.
Right. Well, I mean, I remember telling you, like, I'm proud of you. Like you didn't want to do it. It wasn't good for your mental health to be there. And you did what was right for you.
It's interesting in a situation like that, right, where I couldn't go but I felt so guilty for not being able to overcome that and walk in because, I had good intentions. I wanted to go support this family. Yeah. But when I reached out to the person who I wanted to see, and I apologized, and I just told her like I couldn't do it. And she was so kind about that, which I really liked. So it's interesting. People are very kind about it typically, but we're harder on ourselves, right?
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
I do have to say, I'm very pro talking about mental health issues, and I'm very pro medication. And I think that came from like that lack of thinking about mental health problems in a negative way. Definitely came from my mom. She had her own problems with depression. I know she took medications for it. And I wish I had known more, and just been more supportive of her. I was such a little brat growing up. And, I didn't know any better, but I had my first panic attack, and my mom was so instrumental in how I dealt with anxiety afterwards. She was like, it's not a big deal. It is so common we will get you help. Let's, we can go to the doctor. If you want to take any medications, take medications. Like, not a big deal. Yeah. If you want to see a therapist, not a big deal. We'll do that. Like, you don't have to take medications forever. She was, just completely paved the way for me not to have those
like hang-ups.
Yeah, and just I have no problem now telling people, oh yeah, I have anxiety. I've had a panic attack. I've panic attacks, multiple. Like, I deal with it every day. I take medication. Like, I'm not embarrassed by any of that, and it's definitely because of my mom.
What a gift! What a gift that she gave you, and she probably didn't realize the impact of it at the time. But what a thing to do.
100%, because I've seen other people, close people to me, deal with anxiety issues and feel like they're crazy. Yeah. And just they're completely opposed to trying medication. And one thing I thought, I was pretty young, when I first got on medications, but I was like, are they going to make me feel high? Like, am I going to feel like different? Like, yeah, I don't want that. But they just made me feel normal. Like, I could handle stress. Like, before medications, I felt like my head was barely above water at the most, like, minimal, like, anxiety producing situations, like nothing to really be anxious about, but I felt like I could barely, get a breath in. Yeah. After medications, it feels like you're in a raft and like you can handle things.
You said that
your experience of it. Yeah.
Well, so you said that exact illustration to me years ago, and it has never left, because I had a similar concern when I started on anti-anxiety meds or an antidepressant, and like, what am I going to feel like? Does this alter me? I feel like you hear all the horror stories. And it was kind of a journey for me, because I went on an SSRI and I just felt like a lump on a log. I didn't care about anything. It made me so much worse. And I got really like kind of apathetic and just a little bit mean, which is rough when you have toddlers. Wow. Trying to parent when you feel that way is so hard.
Gosh. I can only imagine.
Right. So I got off of it. And just kind of like washed my hands, like, well, I guess I guess that's not for me. And then I started working with a therapist, and it came to my attention that I was probably ADHD or borderline. And they're like, well, yeah, putting you in an SSRI is like the worst idea. So they gave me a more stimulant-based one, and it's been night and day. But I've been on it twice, and the first time I went on it, I was not in a healthy place mentally, obviously. But at that time, I was drinking a lot. And what's funny about drinking and my relationship with alcohol is I've realized it was the only thing accessible to me for a long time. And it was the only thing I could do without guilt attached to it. And so it was an escape. It was it was a way for me to express control over myself. And so I used it. And I always kind of joked that, like, well, I'm a sailor, so I have high tolerance. So of course I can drink a bottle of wine myself. Yeah. And so I was drinking quite a bit on that, and, not falling down drunk, but just more than any person should on a regular basis. So I read the warnings on the Wellbutrin that I was getting onto. And of course it's like, don't drink. And I was like, it's probably fine. I know lots of people who drank on stuff like this. It was not a good combo for me. And I ended up with every single negative side effect you read. I was driving to pick up someone, like clothes from someone, and I was going to a new location, and I legit was so paranoid. I almost texted Jake like my location. I think I messaged you something psychotic. And I realized, like, it's because you've fucked with your mind with these drugs and with alcohol. Like, knock it off. That was so dumb. So I got off it, and I was really scared. Started working with a new therapist about a year later, and he again recommended doing Wellbutrin, and I was so scared. And he's like, well, you're at a totally different place with alcohol. Now you drink maybe once a month, and it's one glass of wine because it gives you a headache now. And my experience has been night and day. But that's just my cautionary tale, to read the side effects and listen to them. Don't mess with it.
Alcohol makes me so sleepy, and at this point, I've been on my anti-anxiety medications for so long that I always assumed it was my medications. And I even told my doctor about it, and he was like, I don't know, maybe just alcohol makes you sleepy. But I'm like, does it? I don't know, maybe it does. But it's so funny how easy it is. I mean, like, alcohol, it's so much easier to turn to than crack. So So it's one of those things that's not just socially acceptable. It's like almost expected a lot of times.
Socially encouraged for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so easy to turn to alcohol when you have anxiety or depression. You're just like, let's just numb all of this. I just don't want to feel this anymore. And I have family members who've had problems with alcohol, and I remember them being like, oh, I'm going to stop drinking. And I was always like, oh, that's not my problem. Like, I don't even remember, like, when was the last time I had a drink? Like, I don't know, maybe a couple weeks ago. It was never like a big deal. And then I realized I started drinking more like alone and on a Tuesday night. And it's so easy to get into the habit of like, oh, I had a hard day. Let's have a glass of wine or 5. So yeah.
Well, and there's all the jokes about it, right? And like talk about something that has zero stigma around it is like this mom culture. You had a hard day.
There's more of a stigma not to drink.
Exactly. You are the oddity if you choose
like,
to
you
not
don't
drink.
Why not? Are you recovering alcoholic?
Exactly. Are you pregnant? Do you have a problem?
Yeah.
Like,
are you pregnant? Oh my gosh, right?
Oh my God.
Have you heard Jim Gaffigan's joke about alcohol? He's like, you can say you don't drink alcohol and people are like, what is wrong with you? He's like, but if I say like, I don't drink water, they're like, oh yeah, well no, neither do I. Yeah.
Seriously,
like
it's
that.
so weird.
Yeah.
It's so
pressure.
Weird. I'm trying to break absolutes where I say I'm never, I'm always, I'm, like instead give yourself the leeway that like, yes, while I have changed my relationship with alcohol, I'm happy to drink it when I want to, but I'm not going to feel the pressure to do that all the time because I realize it's not in my best interest in this point in my life,
Yeah. That's the other thing, like you just said, is that I'm in my mid-30s and I feel like crap after I drink too much. Like it takes me like 3 to 5 business days to recover if I have like 2 strong margaritas. Like, and I just don't love that. Like I don't want to be tired all the next day. Like I remember me and my dad used to go a lot to one of our favorite Mexican restaurants. We haven't been in a while, but they make this hella strong margarita. And if I have 2, like forget anything I was going to do for the rest of the day. Like I'll get home at 3 and nap until 7. Like it's terrible because again, alcohol makes me so sleepy. So yeah, that's the other thing is that like, I can't recover.
Yeah.
Like I got plans for the rest of the week. I can't.
Got plans for my life.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've gotten quite a few of those messages from you. We're like, well, I had one margarita and I took a 5-hour nap and now it's, yeah. So I know we touched on it a little bit, but like how has leaving our experience affected you now that we're, a few years out, but still very much in the trenches with it all?
Yeah. Well, as you know, it was very, very hard. Again, like I said, I don't do good with change. It felt like I was grieving, like my old self was gone and I just couldn't make myself believe the things that I was supposed to believe. Something that really helped me was that realizing like, okay, this isn't my fault. I actually did all the things that, a Christian was supposed to do to prevent you from straying away. I heard someone somewhere was like, you can't choose what you believe. And I was like, wait, what? And he's like, if I said, I'll give you $1 million to believe the earth is flat, you can't do it. It doesn't work like that. And I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, that makes sense. That has helped a little bit, but there's still a lot of guilt that I'm doing something bad, that I'm disappointing all the people in my life that love me. And they think I'm, a lost cause, and a lot of identity crisis. Again, like what do I actually believe? Am I still religious? Do I still believe in God? What?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then something that helped a lot was talking to a therapist, and she made me realize like I don't have to have it figured out. I can still hold on to whatever beliefs I still want to hold on to. And just because I don't, belong to that religion anymore doesn't mean I have to give all of that up.
Right.
And I don't have to explain to anyone why I believe or don't believe, whatever, and that was just mind blowing for me.
It's funny how
like,
for you?
Yeah.
Well, like simple concepts like that where you're like, well, yeah, duh, of course. But like, it's just mind altering when you've never had the opportunity.
Yeah.
What was the question?
So how about for you? Because so your anxiety really reared its head when you left.
Yeah, there's been few instances like I talked about, you know, my experience in Ecuador, and I definitely was having it then. And I just remember like being on the kitchen floor and like breathing into a bag because I could not get a full breath. And like I didn't understand what that was. And now I'm like, oh, it was an anxiety attack. And after Ecuador, I think that like really kicked it off though. My body's like, this is fun. Let's feel like this more often.
Do it again.
Yeah.
No.
But it was I know something I've struggled with my whole life has been what I now am able to term body dysmorphia and low self-esteem, which ended up leading to disordered eating. And so, you know, in the time sequence of my life, I've always felt those things. But when we got back from Ecuador, there was definitely this like feeling of like, what are we doing? We made a huge mistake. We failed at something. Now we're going to get into this. And I ended up getting a job at a local gym, and which was good but bad in the case that it gave me something to control when I felt very out of control. And so I could control the calories I was ingesting. I could control what I was doing with my body. And that ended up being a hyperfixation of mine, which also plays into like, oh, well, you do have ADHD. And when you really hit on something, you really hit on it. And so I was doing pretty extreme things with my diet, and I started being a personal trainer there. And then I would try out all these new diets and fads in the excuse of like, well, if a client ever comes to me and wants to know, how does it feel to be on keto? How does it feel to be paleo? How do, you know, I wanted to have the experience be like, I did it. This is what I felt. But really, I was trying to see how hard I could push my body and to what extremes, to the point where I did a full prep as if I was going to be in a bikini competition on stage. I put myself through actual hell. And it ended up jacking my system horribly, you know, but I'm like, why? But so, you know, I was in denial for a long time about those issues. And it wasn't until I did a round of therapy after we left, really loved that therapist, was the same one you saw. And she was just a powerhouse. And then I stopped because I was like, well, I did that for 6 months. I guess I healed all my issues. Yeah. Wow. Little did we know. Yeah. So these things started to rear their heads again and other manifestations. And so I decided to talk to my doctor about it. And she's like, well, you know, disordered eating is a thing. Let's get you with a specialist who deals with this. And so I had a consult with him. And I was like, sometimes like I really like to, you know, track my food and weigh my body. And I also, you know, have like body image issues is what I said. And he looks at me and goes, so when did the body dysmorphia really start for you? And I remember being shocked that he used that terminology, because I'm like, I don't look in the mirror and see an 800-pound person. And he's like, well, that's an extreme case. It's a range, you know? And I was like, oh shit, that means I do have it. Yeah. But you know, it's been working with him through that, but that has been a big way I feel like my anxiety has manifested. And it got worse after we left. But for a long time, I think it was bad when we were in, just because it was a control thing. It's what I could control. In so many areas of my life, I couldn't control anything. Yeah. It was under the guise that I could, but I really couldn't. And so.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny how, well, not funny, but yeah, we will reach out to absolutely anything that we can control. And usually it's bad.
Yeah, to our harm, right? To our detriment.
Yeah. With the food or with the alcohol or it's just too much. And then you know, with social media and stuff, that's the other thing that it's so easy to compare yourself. And it's almost it's so hard not to compare yourself. I feel like even for someone like me, who I feel like I have pretty good self-esteem, social media is terrible. Because you could always be skinnier, you could always be prettier, your hair could be shinier, you could have more money. Like anything you feel like you're lacking, social media will shove it in your face.
Well, what did I just send you the other day? I went to the gym to get stronger. It turns out I'm not only weak, I'm ugly. Like,
yeah,
right?
Exactly. Yes.
A lot of issues like this come from lack of like identity. And that's hard to grow your identity, especially like in, you know, in our 30s. We're like, well, I should have my, you know, I think I know who I am. But then when you have all these things that did identify you taken away, it's really hard because that our environment was all external. We got
Yeah.
we got our sense of identity by whatever label or badge we had at the time. And so when you take that away, you're like, well, what am I? And
Yeah.
so,
100%.
it's been an interesting journey to like we're learning all these things, what our opinions are, but also like what makes me me.
It's also been kind of freeing in a way to be like, okay, I don't have anybody telling me what I should think about this. So
Right.
what do I actually think?
Yeah.
What do I think is right here? So that's been kind of nice to have the freedom to make a decision that's not already made for you.
Well, and also realizing that like your opinion can change as you gain knowledge, and you're not married to a belief just because you said you believed it once.
Yeah.
Your belief, your opinion,
Yep.
your everything can change. And that's okay, right? Like finding the beauty in that and not being so rigid.
It's important to be like open-minded as well. Okay, I don't know what the right thing is here, but I'm willing to hear both sides. Yeah.
So what are things that have helped you besides therapy? You touched on that. Like what are things that have helped you manage or, are things you want to do more of?
Spending time outside really helps. And this has been a weirdly like not cold and super rainy winter. Well, spending time outside whenever there's sun, I'm trying to make a goal of just going outside if I can see the sun.
Yeah, good.
Also, and I feel like this is where I differ from my ADHD friends who like need to be busy all the time. I need a day to do nothing. And it's not even like a self-care day where I'm gonna like do a face mask and take a bath. I don't have a bathtub, but take a long hot shower. It is literally I have nothing planned on my schedule and I need to do nothing. If I want to leave my house, I will, and if I don't, I don't. But it's not like someone's going to call me and be like, hey, what are you doing today? And I'm like, nothing. And they're like, okay, let's do this. And I'm like, no, I actually planned nothing. I can't do anything with you.
Yeah.
So yeah, having a day during the week where I do nothing. Love that.
I can read an entire book in one day.
Yeah. Love that. Also like, those emotional support shows, Friends. Sometimes they just feel like a big hug.
Yeah.
And yeah, that humor, obviously, the show Friends and any other funny shows. I was just watching I Am a Killer on Netflix about like people convicted of crimes of murdering other people.
So funny.
And I was like, I don't feel good.
Duh.
I'm like, I like those kind of shows, but just today I was like, no,
not a good
isn't
fit.
good. No. Yeah. Okay. What about you? Therapy, obviously.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in therapy. I think people hesitate because they're worried they're not going to like mesh with their therapist. And that's something I want to encourage people is like date your therapist. Like a lot of insurances have your first 1 or 2 appointments are $1. That way you can see if you like them. And I have broken up with 2 therapists and it's been real easy. I'm just like, it's not a good fit. One, I just in the process of even scheduling an appointment with this woman, I was like, I can't handle you. And then another one, I made it through one appointment with her and I got off and I was like, I was legitimately worried that what I was saying was going to upset her. Like, I had to like hold everything back because I was like, I don't think she can handle my problems. I think she's just a little too sensitive about it. And then, but when it jibes, it jibes. And so being again willing to try a different medication, it makes me nervous. Medications do. I'm skeptical about them, but this one has worked wonders. And so yeah, humor, friends. I think building a support system.
I was going to say that too.
Yeah. This group of friends that we have built is just so inspiring and they do nothing but cheerlead or be there. There was someone who's having a rough time right now and in a group text, they're like, what do you need? Are we burning something? Are we smashing something? Are we doing a naked seance dance to the moon? Are we hiking? Are we cold plunging? yeah, they're definitely there to support us through all of this.
Yeah, I love that too. To be able to reach out to people and be like, okay, I just need a vent, guys. Like,
yeah. Yeah. And there's been instances where, just due to the pure traumaticness of an event, I'll be telling them something and I'll be very dissociated from it. Mm-hmm. So I'm speaking of it in just a very cold, matter-of-fact way. And the anger that they feel in my behalf is shocking. And I'm like, oh, dang, I should be mad. They're so mad. I should be mad. Like,
yeah.
Wait, what?
I remember, some things that have happened to you that we've been like, who do we got?
Yeah. Who we taking out?
Yeah. Who we taking out? Yeah.
Yeah. So, leaning in on your support system for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But I think that one good thing that comes from having anxiety is that situations that make me nervous, I'm like, I can do it. It's fine. I live my life in a constant state of terror. A little bit of nervousness. Yeah.
Not terror.
But like, I remember we went like, you guys surprised, was it me and Sarah, or was it just me that you guys surprised us with that weekend getaway? And
it was
when
you
we
and
went
Sarah.
to Gig Harbor. Yeah.
It was you and Sarah.
Yeah. You guys are great. And so they took us to the zoo, the aquarium. Aquarium/zoo, and we did a dive with sharks. And I remember putting on the like whole getup and the scuba device, and you kind of have to like, when you first take a breath on it's kind of, there's some tension to it, so you have to like really breathe in, and like you feel like you're not getting air for like a half a second. And I'm like, oh, I've dealt with times where I felt like I couldn't breathe. Like, it's fine. I always could breathe, so I'll be okay. And one of our friends was kind of freaking out. She like stayed on the stairs the whole time with like just her head in the water.
Man,
but I remember being like, I've had worse with anxiety where I felt like I couldn't breathe, so I'm good. I'm fine. I'll probably survive this.
That was kind of a big oversight in planning that. So Heather's bestie and myself got together to plan this weekend. That it was a heavy weekend for the girls, and so we wanted to surprise you guys with some things. Mm-hmm. So there's a zoo where you can get in the shark tank, and you're obviously safe and all that, but it's a really cool experience. So we put together this weekend to go do that. It never occurred to me that the fourth person involved would be terrified of this experience until that morning when we surprised you at Sephora, and I mentioned it to her, and she's like, wait, what? Because I was like, well, yeah, the four of you going to go in. I was pregnant, so I couldn't.
Yeah.
And her face dropped. She's like, I need to go call my husband. And I was like, oh no. What have
That's
I done?
Right.
That's
right. She was very on the fence for a long time. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I was like, girl, this is a cinch if you have anxiety. Like, at least you know why you're nervous.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, it's the worst when you're anxious about, you have no idea what. I remember explaining that to Edwin and being like, I'm anxious, and he's like, why? And I'm like, I don't know why.
I love when someone tells me, just calm down. Like, was that all I needed to do? Oh my God, I'm so thankful you told me that. Otherwise I would have just kept being anxious.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, just let it go. Calm down.
I don't surround myself with people that say those things.
Yeah, that's an immediate breakup. Ghosting your ass if you say that.
100%. Yeah.
I know. But one thing I actually just did this morning, and I'm kind of excited to try, is like inner child healing, inner child work.
Oh, I've never heard of this.
Yeah. So it's basically, the concept is you go to your inner child and you try to heal them or tell them like you're safe, and like
oh my gosh. Immediate tears.
Immediate. Like, I went to my acupuncturist today and I was like, could you help me work? Like, I'm having a lot of anger and just, some trauma has come up. Can you help me work through it? And he's like, yeah, well, do you want to get to the root of it? And I was like, who knows where the root of it is? He's like, you don't have to know. I'll show you. And I was like, okay. So he led me through this exercise. The man put 4 needles in me, and all of a sudden I can't stop crying. Just tears pouring down. Where I was like, you're going to have to change the pillow. Like, this is going to be saturated. And yeah, it was really crazy, but it was honestly like a pretty transformative experience. I know I'm going to have to talk to her again, inner like little child Taya, because it's not that simple, but it sounds totally woo-woo. It sounds crazy, but it really did have a very large impact, and it's crazy.
reminds me of the podcast you sent me, Glennon Doyle's
Yeah.
podcast. Is it just called Hard Things, or We Can Do
I think
Hard
We Can Do
Things,
Hard
or-
Things.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Tia Levings was on her
Yeah.
podcast, and Taya just sent me the episode, and I cried so many times, and I
Oh my God.
realized I'm not really okay.
Yeah.
Like, I felt like I went through the hardest part of leaving the religion, and it was months of, crying and feeling like garbage and feeling like, part of me was dying. And then I got over that, and then not over it, but then things started to get better. I started to feel better, and I started to feel the relief of actually leaving, because I am happy I left. And I knew, even though it was hard, that I was doing the right thing for me.
Mm-hmm.
And so because I started to feel better, I just assumed I was over it.
Mm-hmm.
And after listening to this podcast, I realized I was not. But one of the things that she said to Abby, the other host, was like to go back to that 16 or 17-year-old girl she was when she was having troubles, and to be who she needed at that time. And oh my gosh, that made me cry.
Yep.
Yeah. Just it made me realize I need therapy.
When I finished therapy the first time, I remember speaking to a friend and telling her, like, I'm finished. I feel so great. And she tells me this like a week ago. She's like, yeah, I knew you were not okay. She's like, yeah, that first layer of the onion got peeled off, but there's a whole lot left under it.
Yes.
And sure enough, it's just, it's taking those layers. And also because we had to control our emotions and our thoughts and our feelings for so long, I am learning how I express my emotions and how I perceive how emotions should be expressed are totally wrong. Like I was talking about, like having like an emotional release and getting a good cry or something.
Yeah.
And I felt crazy because in the midst of the recent upheaval, like I would cry, and then 2 seconds later I'd be able to like laugh about something and change the subject. And I'm like, I feel bipolar. Like, how am I so flip-floppy? And my therapist is like, well, a release, like, what do you think of releases? And I was like, days of sobbing uncontrollably, like a movie montage. And, and he's like, well, that's not accurate at all. He's like, imagine it like your cup is pretty full, and then something makes it overflow. And so the water comes out, but unless something is continuously being put in there, the water, spills out, and then it holds what it's left in there. He's like, and that's kind of what you're doing with the releases. A little bit needs to come out. And so it comes out. And then your cup is okay, and you're okay for now. So, he's like, it's not always going to be massive. Sometimes it's just a little bit of release, but it counts. Let it happen. And that was like an epiphany, like, oh my God, I don't have to have a complete and utter mental breakdown.
Right.
Go to the psych ward. Like, oh.
Yeah. I think I found that out after my mom passed away, because like
Yeah.
I would have moments where like I would talk about her, and then I would cry for like a good 10 minutes, and then I would feel better afterward.
Yes, exactly.
And so now when something makes me cry, I'm like, you know what? Just cry. Just let it out.
Yeah.
Like I don't enjoy crying, but I know that it's what I need, and I just need to get it out,
Right.
and I'll feel better afterward.
Yeah. I know there's been a lot of instances where I'll start talking about something, and then all of a sudden I'm like, I'm going to cry. I didn't even know I cared.
Yeah.
What the hell?
Yeah.
Or-
it totally
or
sneaks up on
songs.
you sometimes.
Jesus, what is happening with some music? I can't.
Yeah.
I can't. I'm just over there choking
Music
up.
always gets me. I'm naturally a crier. Like I just
Yeah. You have such a good heart.
Oh, I don't know about that, but I am empathetic to a fault. Like I put myself in people's shoes, even though it's not really what I want to do. And as a nurse, sometimes I really have to stop myself from doing that. Otherwise, I
Yeah.
don't think I'd go back to work. But yeah, I'm naturally a crier, and I used to feel like I was weak or dumb or just like, immature maybe. Like, I'm a grown adult. Why am I crying?
Right.
And now I'm like, you know what? That's just how I'm made. It's
Yeah.
just me. I can't help it.
I feel like I always have to have a reason to cry, or like an emotion behind it, instead of just like, that song was sad. That book was sad. See, I've never had an issue crying in books, actually. That's been like a badge of honor that I'm like, made me cry.
Yeah.
But
No,
So-
I absolutely don't need a reason to cry. One time I cried. Actually, I was having a bad day, but I cried because I love tomatoes, and I was making a sandwich and I didn't have any tomatoes. And it was just like the straw that broke the camel's back.
I don't have any tomatoes.
The sandwich is going to be crap. I don't have tomatoes.
You know, I agree. I think a sandwich needs tomatoes.
I know. It needs
I agree.
right?
I said it. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, do you have any other tidbits you would like to share about mental health or the lack thereof that we have?
I think of this story. The last therapist that I had, and I didn't have her for very long, and I don't know why. I just felt like I was busy. I was getting my bachelor's degree, and I was doing a travel job in Wenatchee, and I met with her, and she was like, well, you know, what made you want therapy? And I was like, well, she's like, how are you feeling? And I'm like, well, actually, I'm feeling really well. Like I'm working and I'm studying, and I feel like I'm doing pretty well. I was like, but I mean, like, I do have some things, like my mom passed away, and you know, a few years ago, and I left the religion that I grew up in, and I have a lot of family that won't talk to me anymore, and I lost all my friends, and and I also live like 3 hours away from home, so most of the time I'm by myself, and I'm also like working full time and studying full time. And she was like, yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot that you have on your plate. Yeah, I think you do need therapy. And I was like, I mean, I'm pretty good, but like,
yeah, everything's fine.
Yeah. So you can. And that's the other thing. You don't have to feel like you're on the edge of an emotional breakdown to have therapy. You can have therapy for any reason. Even if you feel like you're doing good, therapy's great.
Yeah.
The short times that I've had it, I've always had a moment of like, oh my God, that is going to change my life.
Yeah. And it's not always like super crazy deep where they're like, tell me your dreams and like, how do you feel about that? I've never once had them ask me something like that.
Yeah.
They can be blatantly honest, and I really do appreciate that feedback. Mm-hmm. But there's so many different styles, but yeah, I've never had one like try to hold my hand and like, here's a tissue.
They're like, get it out. Come on.
Yeah.
Get it all out. Yeah.
The moral of the story is okay to not be okay. And it's okay feel to need help. You. We see you. Yeah. It sucks.
It really does. I remember when I had my first panic attack, and I was like, I would not wish this on anyone.
Yeah.
Not on my worst enemy. So if that has been your experience, I'm so sorry. You're not alone. Mm-hmm. We see you. Ask for help. Don't be shy to ask for help. Don't rule out medications just because you're scared of them or what you've heard. Mm-hmm. I would just say just have it open as a possibility, even if you're scared of taking medications.
Yeah. They can be a tool, right? As can so many other things. But I think when all those power combined, you get Captain Planet, but you also do get, some improved mental health.
Yeah.
And that's a gift.
Yeah. And know that you don't have to be on medications forever. Yeah. Like if you're going through a hard time, you can be on medications for a couple months and then you might not need it anymore. I've gone on and off several times. Mm-hmm. So it's not like you're married to one medication for the rest of your life.
A lifetime of it.
Yeah. Let us know if you have any tips for coping with anxiety. Yeah. Is it friends at the office? Which one is it?
Is it Parks and Rec?
It's one of those two. You know, you have an emotional support show and an emotional support water bottle and like.
For sure. Pillow. Yeah. Emotional support pillow.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Squishmallow.
I still haven't given up the pregnancy pillow I'm sleeping with. And Jake's like, I had a clothing swap this weekend, and he's like, I almost put it out on the rack and been like, we'll destroy marriages.
Yes.
I don't know what he's complaining about. I have never been happier than snuggling this pillow. It's just heavenly.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
Right? Game changer. That's another thing that's so huge for mental health. You have to get sleep.
Yeah.
So if you need a pregnancy pillow, get one.
Get one. Yeah, that was the best day when my therapist was like, well, if your body feels like it needs to go back to bed, it's okay to go back to bed. And I was like, did you just give me permission to nap? And he's like, yeah I did. Like, say less. Bye.
Right.
Session over. I got to get
bye. Yeah. Exactly.
I think for me, I need like that external, like someone giving me permission or someone telling me it's okay. And hopefully I'll get over that in the future. But the times where I have been told by a therapist, like, well, yeah, it's okay to do that. Or no, it's, like you shouldn't do that. Like epiphany. That's what I'll continue to pay these people if they continue to tell me what to do.
Yeah, it is. It's great because it's like, why didn't I think of that?
Right.
But it really, you didn't think of it.
Did I need you to give me permission? Well, thank you folks for listening. And next week we're going to do a Q&A.
Yeah. If you have any cues, let us know.
What's our backup plan for if we don't have any cues?
Make some up and be like, this is what we were sent.
Susie from Virginia sent this. Thanks, Susie.
Heather from Burlington, Washington asks.
What's your middle name?
Elizabeth.
Elizabeth. Oh.
Elizabeth and Marie have asked.
See, you knew my middle name, but at least... Yeah,
yeah, you didn't know mine. Whatever.
Sorry.
One of us loves the other one more than the other.
I should know Elizabeth because that's Paige's middle name. But...
It's like the easiest, it's like the most common middle name ever.
I know. Yeah, seriously.
I mean, Marie's pretty far up there too. But
yeah. All right, so we'll see you guys next week. Thank you again for listening. Follow us on all the socials, except TikTok if it gets banned. But we'll see what happens with that. And of course, our email is tffopodcast@gmail.com if you feel like shooting us a long letter filled with your emotions. Yes. So let us know.
Yeah. Thanks for listening, and we will see you guys next week.
Bye.
Bye.